Hi everyone, and welcome to another discussion on Practivism versus Activism. In this discussion we're going to be doing a Q&A, questions and perspectives on Practivism versus Activism. Unfortunately, we have a bit of feedback problems and we haven't been able to solve it. So we're going to simply continue with the discussion, and we hope that you can hear what we're saying in spite of the feedback. Okay, so I will read the first question that has come in on our Google moderator. As I understand it, the main difference between activist and practivist is that activists operate from the starting point of emotional distress, practivists from a stable common sense point within what is best for all life. Your perspective, please. So this was regarding what we were also discussing last time about the starting point of activists being emotional. So, Lauri, do you want to give a perspective on this?
Sure. Well, emotional distress, if it's understood really widely, I would be inclined to agree. I mean, the activists that I've met, I will actually test if I will have my headphones this way so that the feedback won't come that much. All right. So the activists that I've met have always acted, or most of them have acted from a starting point of I'm worried and something has to be done. Where a practivist, in my eyes, would more look, who am I within what I do, and within the and from that realizing that who I am is what I sort of give to the world. I mean. It doesn't really matter. I can have all the best intentions, so to speak, but unless I really look at what is it that I actually do within myself and without myself, if there is any conflict between those points, any, say, hidden agenda, whatever that may be, it might, in my eyes, how do you say it? At some point that will turn against itself, so to speak. So a practivist would be more careful in that, where an activist, or the activists that I've seen, are satisfied with being worried in itself, sort of having that perspective on the outside.
So like the person asking the question saying that activists are acting more from a starting point of emotional distress. Hilda, do you have a perspective?
Yes, therefore the activist cannot see clearly, cannot see the whole problem in itself, that the problem that they're focusing on, which is usually a small part of the bigger problem, they can't see that it's a part of the bigger problem. I mean, when Lauri was speaking, I had this notion, yes, exactly, a practivist actually understands that the problem is the whole society as we have it today. What I was saying in the previous video, that the system is in the people. So the problem is actually in all people. We all grow up in this abusive system and we start supporting it from within. So a practivist actually realizes that every single individual needs to change in order to actually fix something. So while an activist actually is just following his own emotions and following this perceived path of fixing problems that should work, although it never does, a practivist actually realizes that we are the ones that need fixing. And we need to fix ourselves in order to actually show another way of existing.
Yeah, so it's basically the realization that everything we do is politics, that we're doing politics in every moment, in every action, every thought that we think is our decision for what kind of world we should live in. So as an activist, one might be for animal equality, but then if one is walking around and having, you know, all these brutal thoughts about other people, one is actually indirectly, in a way, participating in upholding that abuse. Even though it's not always easy to see those connections, we are all interconnected in that way.
Yeah, what I've noticed about activists is actually that all of them, there's this common denominator that they're all avoiding politics. They are all like, no politics, just get that away from me. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to be involved in it. I don't want to have anything to do with it. And all the while, they fail to realize that politics is actually the one aspect of human existence that is actually influencing pretty much everything. So for things to actually really change, change has to occur in the political spheres, which means that all of us all people who realize that that it's actually the problem, that it's in the people, should become involved at some point in politics, because that's the force that changes stuff. Yeah.
I think the problem within that might be that politics, the word has been confused with the manifestation currently holds. I mean, by definition, politics, one way of looking at it, it is the other option to war. I mean, we can either force a certain decision through, or we can all decide to do something. And that is basically the two options that we have. And here it's important not to confuse the word politics with how it exists now. I mean, there's a lot of things that I do not agree with in how politics are run currently. But I have no doubt in my mind that a solution must be a political one. I mean, looking back at history, war has brought change, yes, but for the better, I doubt it. Has it lasted? I doubt that too. Has it brought about substantial change or only cosmetic changes? To my opinion, yes.
Yeah, it brought only a division of wealth. I mean, politics in the essence of the word, as it started actually in Greece back in the little towns, or the polises, they were called. I mean, the politai were actually the inhabitants of that town who would get together and discuss town stuff, town matters.
But wasn't that only older men who were allowed to participate?
As far as I remember from reading it on the wiki, it was first there was a king, and then the people kicked the king out, and then they would get together and talk about it. But yes, I think there were only a select few, because probably not everybody was interested.
But I would
probably
say that
the men.
A redefinition of politics, or a way of understanding it differently, is that politics are the collective decisions and agreements that we make, whether we make them verbally or in writing as laws, or whether we make them through our actions. And so whatever is here right now on this planet, we are collectively agreeing to by our acceptance and participation. And when we're talking about also going into politics, that's also what we mean, is that our collective decisions and ways of living on Earth has to change. And so what often happens with activists is that they simply push those people away, push away the mass, and say, we don't want to participate in that culture, for example. But then they don't go to the next step of educating people and assisting people to see what it is that they're seeing, in realizing that decisions, for example, to stop animal abuse has to be collective. It has to be something that everyone understands. And so the fact that people don't understand it means that there's a disconnect between how we see ourselves as human beings and how we see animals, and thus a process of education is required, first of all. And then, you know, so when we're talking about politics, it's also that aspect of it that is the collective decision-making as a democratic process.
That's actually putting forward, going forward from what I was about to add to the conversation. I mean, when I've opposed somebody and said that this problem is caused by this group of people, for example, when I look at my task list, if you will, in that scenario, it would be to get these people out of power or get them to do things correctly. But my task list doesn't really consider what it is then that we actually have to do. I know who to beat, but I don't know what to do. And in that, education is one of the answers that needs to be considered thoroughly.
Yes, definitely. The last time that we had the chat, unfortunately we weren't recording anymore, but Lauri said that he studies law and how it is ridiculous that the actual rule books of our society are not taught in every single school.
Yes, or that it's not written in a way that everyone could understand.
Yeah, exactly.
So shall we continue to the second question?
Sure.
What would be the difference between activists' and practivists' view about petitions, such as, for example, universal basic income, against the privatization of water, against EU regulation on seeds in favor of seed industry? So those are like examples of petitions that people sign and that activist groups work towards changing. So Hilda, do you have a perspective?
My personal perspective on petitions is that they are another diversion point. I mean...
How do you mean a diversion point?
It is... I think it's quite senseless and useless that people think that their their signature is contributing anything to any sort of change. I mean, there were two instances in Slovenia where people were asked to sign a petition. One was for the disabled people to get more assistance, which would be funded by the government, and the second one was, of course, for weed, to legalize weed, and those signatures, those papers, one should bring to one's local, what's it called, where they give you the stamp that you were here, the municipal headquarters, the town hall.
Sure,
I think, yeah, to the governmental institution in the town.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem. And one would get a stamp then that one did give off the signature, and the invalids, the disabled people, actually met the quota. It was like 5,000 signatures or something. 5,000 people actually went to their town hall and got the stamp and got the whole thing sorted out legally, and nothing happened. There was absolutely no change.
So are you saying that petitions exist as a way that the illusion is given that it's possible to change the laws or to... Okay.
Yes.
Lauri,
there was no change.
Sorry.
Not in our country.
That's actually a good point to continue from. I mean, with the questions such as basic income, a practivist would ask and look for an answer, him or herself, that what would this change bring? What would it affect? How can we bring it about if it's worthwhile? And I don't want to label here. I'm sure there are activists out there who do a ton of stuff, but utilizing the so-called traditional means, for example, getting petitions, going to hold seminars for people and whatnot, in my eyes, these methods have sort of failed to ask themselves, where does this go exactly in terms of actually creating that change? And if these are the only tools we have, what is the situation in which we have to create change? A practivist would approach these questions really wanting to see for themselves what's the situation and how to create these changes. Where in my eyes, an activist tries to do his or her best without actually
follows the rules.
Without actually asking to the end and really questioning the method and the system. I mean, for all I know, the system can be in a sort of a headlock situation where a lot of changes must occur, but within the current way of how things are done, it's next to impossible. So obviously then things have to change before these changes can be implemented. And then there's a certain order of things in which one has to approach. We cannot go to gathering names if that doesn't count anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that that's also a big difference, is that because the word practivist means practical, or it's the word practical that's the difference, in that, first of all, the starting point is looking at, will this solution be best for all? That's the basic fundamental principle that we're working from. And then, exactly as you said, Lauri, it's about looking at the total picture, which also includes looking at, will this be a permanent or as permanent as possible solution? Will this be sustainable in the long run? As opposed to much of activism that is based on a feeling of desperation or a feeling of hope or any other emotional starting point that often burns out very quickly, or, I mean, even after a couple of years, because it doesn't have an actual practical starting point of looking at the 1+1 equations that needs to line up for this change to actually be possible. So I would say that that's the difference between looking at things from within and as an emotional reaction, and then from looking at the physical, practical building blocks that are required for making this change happen.
Yeah.
That's actually really fascinating, because it is roughly what I saw happen in Occupy. It was, of course, I didn't see any other country. I know 2 cities from my country, but what in my eyes happened was that it was sort of a hype. I mean, I think it's a good thing that acted as a starting point for many people, but that particular hype itself, it lasted for a moment, and then it died down, and many of those people went back to do whatever it was that they were doing before that hype. And what I realized then was that this is, like, I can't try to create change this way, because I cannot hold up a hype forever. So what I do has to come from who I am, and thereby the practivist view of, look at that, look at who you are, look at what you go through, what you think about, what you feel, and what's going on in your life, and then try to direct that into something that also contributes into creating a world that is best for all. I mean, done widely enough, I'm sure that will have more of an impact than me going to the market square with a megaphone in my hand. Although that, when said in the right time, with the right words, I cannot deny that too can have an effect, but it shouldn't be like the goal in itself. The goal in itself should be that I carry responsibility for how I live and try to have that contribute to what is best for all.
Hilda, did you want to add something? What did you say?
What Lauri said, to have your way of living, I mean, to live responsibly and to have other people follow that example, if I may use that wording. Yes, essentially.
Yeah, this is about it. We have reached the 20-minute mark. So is there anything you want to say here before we end?
I just wanted to say that the Destiny I process was the only solution that I ever found that would actually change something in my life, and also then consequentially in the lives of others. Because as I change, my world changes, people in my world change.
I have the thing to add that we mentioned that one should look at how one lives. And in that, honesty is really the key. I mean, it's different to be like everyone else. I mean, judgmental, bitter, angry at times, letting that spill over to other people, and then justify that by eating well and shopping ethically. I mean, it's the whole thing, or nothing.
That's a very good point. So after some technical difficulties that actually ended up with me accidentally uploading this video to my own personal channel, we managed to carry out this discussion. And when it's over, I'm going to see how I can transfer it back onto the Equal Money Wiki channel so that it can be part of the other discussions that we've had. And so we're going to return next week. It won't be on this topic. We don't know yet what it will be, but we will announce it on Facebook whenever this topic is set and who the participants will be. So check out the Equal Money System Facebook page regularly, because we'll be posting updates there throughout the week. So thanks, Lauri, and thanks, Hilda, for participating in these discussions.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
See you.